Good evening. Welcome to the May 1st meeting of the Orange County Board of Commissioners here at the Richard Whitted Building in Hillsborough. It's good to see everyone here today on this beautiful, sunshiny May Day. Okay, first up, are there any additions or changes to the agenda? I have one to bring forward, which is we need to add another closed session purpose to the two other closed session purposes at the end of the meeting. So we've got closed session already scheduled, and you'll see in your agenda there's, pursuant to statute, the reasons for the closed session are listed, and we need to add one more, which is to add the following: to establish or to instruct the public body staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken by or on behalf of the public body in negotiating, one, the price and other material terms of a contract or proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and second that we'll add that to the closed session agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 7-0. Any other additions or changes to the agenda? All right, then. Very good. Then we will move on to our arts moment. And Arts Commission member Linda Williamson will introduce our friend Gary Phillips.
I actually don't think he needs any introduction. I think you guys might know him better than me, but I thought I'll go ahead and do it since I have one. So Gary Phillips is the 2016-2017 Poet Laureate of Carrboro. He's a writer, a naturalist, an entrepreneur, and Gary has special interest and expertise in conservation easements and other land protective strategies. He's the co-founder of Weaver Street Realty over 30 years ago. He's active in the business. He lives in a rammed earth house, which I had to Google, hopefully you all know, with his wife, Ilana, in Silcope, North Carolina. Gary avidly reads poetry and anthropological science fiction. He studies amphibian activities on a full moon nights and was once chair of the Chatham County Board of Commissioners. And with that, I will give you Gary.
Speaking of amphibians.
Welcome.
Welcome. Very, very glad to be here. This has become a tradition in Carrboro that is valued by everybody. I have a lot of political poems in my pocket, but I've abandoned them all today because the day was so gorgeous I was inspired by it. To instead read you a poem that I wrote in honor of and after an extraordinary Latin American poet from the 1930s to 60s, Olga Noya. It's called To Wear Red Shoes. I love being a man. To be 64 years old, to live my life without armor, to trust women and have them trust me, to write my poems, to cook with men, to make exquisite food out of the simplest ingredients, to talk about hunger with my women friends, to sleep with my wife, languid, sated, cradled, to dress in my own style and prepare my own clothes, to dress with happiness and style, to wear red shoes, to cut my hair short and sensual, to sleep in the daytime and roam until dawn, to dream of the poems I want to write, to read books written by women and to talk with women in the market and to work with women caring for the world. To listen as the rain collides on my tin roof, to be enveloped in thunder, to run the waves and fall into the sea, to tell Eve, you did the right thing. You are doing the right thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gary. That was beautiful. All right. On that inspiring note, we move on to public comments. As many people know, we divide the public comments into two portions. At this part of the meeting, we'll hear from folks who have signed up to speak to an item that is not on the printed agenda. If you are here to speak to an item that is on the printed agenda, we will call you forward when we get to that item. So there's one person signed up to speak. and that is Susan Ademeyer. Come on forward to the podium here, and Commissioner Rich will start the timer when you're ready.
Okay, go. Hi, I'm Susan Ademeyer. I'm a resident of Orange County and also on the steering committee of Orange County Living Wage. As commissioners, you have a strong interest in the economic welfare of all citizens in the county. There's currently some discussion in the background about whether or not to employ custodial and cafeteria workers in the school systems rather than outsourcing those jobs. My comments have to do with kind of a big picture question about wages. About 20% of residents of Orange County live in poverty, and you all know about the various bad effects of that. These workers are in that low-wage group, and I made a little handout here that you can use for propaganda if you want. If I just divide workers into low-wage and high-wage or adequate wage workers, if you have a low wage, here's what happens. People who don't make much money don't pay much income tax. They need significant support from the government for various things, and they don't spend a lot of money on goods and services. That leads to a downward spiral on the general economy in the county. If people are paid a living wage, exactly the opposite is true. They pay more income tax, they need less government support, and they purchase more goods and services. That is an upward spiral. With the Orange County Living Wage, we've worked hard to get employers to raise the wages of their lowest paid workers. And to date, that amount of raised wages is somewhere between $600,000 and $700,000 that has been put into the pockets of lower paid residents. If you use what's called the multiplier effect, there's actually about $2 million having been put back into the local economy. And that's because when poor people get money, they don't stick it under the mattress, they spend it. They spend it on goods and services, and then those businesses have more profit, and then maybe they can expand and hire more employees. So the whole thing is a positive cycle. I'm going to leave this handout with you to do as you wish. I'd also wanted to mention an article that I saw in the New York Times entitled, "To Understand Rising Inequality, Consider the Janitorial Services, the top janitorial companies at two major businesses with a huge difference." Okay, so thank you. I think my time is up.
Thank you. You can just give those to the clerk, and she'll make sure we get copies of everything. All right, Ms. Ademeyer was the only person signed up to speak at this time, so we'll go on to item number 3, which is announcements, petitions, and comments by board members, 3-minute limit per commissioner. Commissioner Burrows?
So I continue to be moved to talk a little bit about my views on what the history of the Confederacy means. So I'm just going to read to you just this brief thing. This is from PBS. In March of 1957, the largest sale of human beings in the history of the United States took place at a racetrack in Savannah, Georgia. During the 2 days of the sale, raindrops fell unceasingly on the racetrack. It was almost as though the heavens were crying. So too fell teardrops from many of the 436 men, women, and children who were auctioned off during those 2 days. The sale would thereafter be known as the Weeping Time. The owner of the slaves, Pierce Butler, had inherited the family's Georgia plantation some 20 years earlier, but had squandered away his inheritance. That was one of my forebears. There's nothing to be proud of, which you know. I'm looking at you, but you know I know that. that you know that.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacobs?
I guess this is me.
That's hers.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask at our next meeting, I'm sure we could get a thorough report. I'd like to know what the status is of our projects with the residents of the mobile home park communities. We haven't had an update in a while. I'd just like to know where we are on that. That's it.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that back. Commissioner Markopoulos.
Nothing tonight, thanks.
Commissioner Rich.
I'll take Mark's time. So,
That's not how it works.
No?
actually,
Okay.
no.
The Visitors Bureau met last week, and we're having a continued conversation about Airbnb and what regulations Orange County could put on Airbnbs. So I'd like to petition the attorney to try and look into that and see if there's something that we can do, even though the state, I guess, is the last word. We're just hearing this over and over again from the hoteliers, and they're getting more and more frustrated. And I don't know, I don't have answers for them, so I'm hoping maybe you can help me with that. Lots of things went on this weekend. Northside Block Party was a big success, a lot of fun, a lot of dancing, a lot of eating, smiles all around. Congratulations to the Jackson Center for throwing a great party. A good portion of us were at the NAACP banquet, and that was a sold-out event, and really nice to see the support for that organization. There was also the 21st community dinner, and I just want to thank Nerves Levy, because that was a great success. Hundreds of people came and ate and sang and danced and played, and it was a big old fun weekend. And then last night, I want to thank the HRC for putting on the program, the discussion around the UDO and changes that may or may not come to the UDO that surround the flag. The room was pretty full. Unfortunately, one side of the room was one group of people, one side of the room was the other group of people. And what might have been promoted as a conversation really was not a conversation. It was more of people making statements and then other people making statements. And I know it's good to be in the same room and to hear those statements, but it didn't feel as though, to me, it didn't feel like anything changed. And there were some harsh words that were said and feelings that were hurt. It's a tough discussion. I don't know how you have that conversation, but it seems like we need to continue having that conversation. So my takeaway from that is that was a first good step, but we need to do more.
Commissioner Price?
Okay, thank you. First of all, I attended and participated in the first county conversation regarding the opioid epidemic. It was called Bringing It Home, a county conversation about the opioid epidemic. It was held on Thursday. Aaron Keck moderated, and we had a host of people from the state and the county who have to deal with the issue, and it's intended to be the first, and more work will be done in that area. The next day was the inaugural of the local reentry council. They had their first meeting, and I thought Commissioner Jacobs was going to mention it, but it actually dovetailed quite well because the issues are quite interrelated, dealing with opioid. And actually, everyone was saying it's actually past the crisis stage. And then when you're dealing with reentry, a lot of the people have already dealt with some type of substance use disorder. And that also, as the title indicates, it's an inaugural, so it's going to continue. I also attended the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners District meeting. It was held in Chatham County, and one of the, each county that was there said something about what was going on in its county. And there was a persistent theme about school funding and needing money for construction as well as for the various teachers. And it really reinforced the need for the having a bond referendum in November to cover. And even that won't cover, a huge cost when it's all divided up, but that is a reoccurring theme. I also attended what is probably the final program of the Frederick Douglass bicentennial, and one of his descendants was there to talk to us. And actually, he and his colleagues had started the program on Million Abolitionists, but what they're really looking at is both slavery in the past, but the human trafficking and the slavery of today, and trying to break that. So they're actually using their books to try to explain to young people about human trafficking and slavery today. And I want to also thank the Human Relations Commission for holding the conversation last night. I thought we were, as Commissioner Rich said, that we'd have more of a conversation, but at least it got, people came, and I was pleased with that people from both sides of the discussion, the argument, showed up. But I do think we do need to have more of a dialogue. And that's it.
Commissioner McKee?
Yes, I'll follow up on what Commissioner Rich and Commissioner Price has said about the event last night. I was unable to arrive until after the presentation, but I did hear the comments made, and I was a bit disappointed that folks seem to be continually engaged in talking at or past each other rather than talking to each other and trying to find some common middle ground. I did not see a lot of middle ground achieved last night. The other thing that I'll mention is we're about 7 days away from the primary, and I would encourage everyone to go vote. This is your chance to have your vote, your voice, and I would remind everyone, if you don't vote, you have eliminated your possibility of having a say in your government. That's not to say you don't have an opinion, not to say you can't come and voice your opinion, but this is your chance to make a difference.
All right, thank you. So I have just a couple of things. One is I'd like to ask everybody, all the board members, to please send me and Commissioner Rich your input on the legislative items by next Tuesday, if possible, so then we can put it all together and we could have it coming back to us on an agenda either the week after or the week after that, right when the legislative session starts. It starts on the 16th. So if we could, potentially, we could have it on our agenda on the 15th, which would be a week after next week. So if folks could, again, just send, if there's anything you want specifically that you want to add or delete, and then your top three, what you would like to see as the top three items.
Can we get an electronic copy again that's a Word document so that we can write on it?
Sure. Is that, can we get a Word version of the existing one? Yes, we'll do that.
Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to mention is, so, at the beginning of our agenda is this public charge, and every week in the minutes it notes that I dispense with reading the public charge. And I really don't care for the wording of the charge. I think it actually sounds kind of, I think it's overly aggressive in its tone. So I'd like to petition us to consider revising that. Or, if no one wants to revise it, I mean, maybe the next chair will want to read it as is, but I don't intend on reading it because I think it actually has a kind of a negative connotation rather than a positive one. So anyway, I would submit that for consideration for a petition. And then just the last thing I want to just say, I wasn't able to be there last night, and I appreciate all the commissioners who were there and their comments. I just want to note that I think that we have to keep our expectations realistic. If you were hoping people were going to come to that meeting and have their minds changed, or stand up and hug at the end, that's just not going to happen. These are incredibly serious matters about which people feel very passionate, as do all of us. And so, but there is, in the civil rights game, we say there's always value in just pulling back the curtain and letting people see how other people feel and learning really where people are rather than how they imagine them. And even if they continue to disagree, there's a value in just, bringing all that to the light. So I appreciate the HRC for putting it on, and tough, challenging thing, and I appreciate all the residents who came out and all of you for being there. So thank you for that. All right, then we will move on now to proclamations, resolutions, and special presentations. Item 4A is the presentation of the manager's recommended fiscal year 2018-2019 annual operating budget and fiscal year 2018-2023 capital investment plan. Bonnie Hammersley, and Paul Lawton, and
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, and Paul will drive for me. I'm pleased this evening to present to you the fiscal year 2018-19 County Manager recommended budget. The theme for this year's budget is a continuation budget. Continuation in the words of operations, continuing and meeting all of our obligations. The first obligation as a county is to pay our debt service. The second is to pay the people who do the work for the county. County government exists to serve residents, and it takes employees to serve the residents. Contract obligations, we've made multi-year obligations on contracts that we need to continue to pay. We honor and enforce our reserve levels that you as a county board have adopted. And then also, as we all know, in the state of North Carolina, counties are responsible for funding of public schools, and our public schools, Chapel Hill, Carrboro City Schools, and Orange County School funding is an important part of our budget each year. This chart illustrates the growth over the last 5 years, and then it also, one of the things I would point out is the small green bar on the bottom. It is showing our decline in fund balance, which actually is a good thing for all of us so that we're not dependent on that going forward. The total budget is $226.8 million. On your handout, there is an error, and it says 226.1. That should be 226.8. But on the hard copy, it was a 1. The next chart shows where our money comes from. And as you'll see in this pie chart, property taxes, as we all know, is the major source of revenue for Orange County. We're at 70% property taxes, 10.6% sales tax, and then the other miscellaneous investment earnings, license and permitting, the appropriated fund balance, charges for services and intergovernmental and transfers. And this makes up the budgeted revenues as is stated in the fiscal year 2018-19 recommended budget. The next chart shows how we spend that revenue in this recommended budget. The education is the largest source of expenditures. That is at 48.1%. As you'll see later in the presentation, the target that you all have established for school funding is 50.1%. This is 48.1% of general fund expenditures. This is 48.1% of expenditures and not general fund revenue. And so that's why it's a 48.1, and you're going to see another number later on. Also, the human services and public safety are significant drivers of expenditures as well, and then support services, general government, and community services.
Can I ask you a quick question before you
Yes.
go on this slide? So personnel costs are distributed across these wedges, so like the public safety personnel costs are in the public safety
Yes,
section, and the
yes.
human services
Yes,
personnel are there?
yes,
Okay.
Yes. Any other questions? Okay. This budget assumes a tax growth of 3%. That is not a tax increase, that's the growth of tax. We've seen a larger tax growth. Part of it is new construction and development. However, there's another part of it where there was an assumption in the assessment that 10% of our parcels would be appealed in the assessment last year, and we only saw about, which would be 6,000 appeals, we only saw about 2,500 appeals, and so we had much less in appeals, and it did not lower the tax base as we had anticipated, because there were fewer appeals and fewer money taken out of the actual tax base. Sales tax growth is 2.4%. That's a little lower than last year, and that's because last year we did push the sales tax growth a little hard, and we're meeting that, but we're close to, it's a little too close, so we're being a little more conservative on the sales tax growth this year. And then general fund reserve, we are at the 16% that you all adopted last year as a policy for the general fund reserve. This budget recommends a phase-in tax rate increase of 0.0142, 1.4 cents, and raises it to 8.519 for a tax rate. The chart here shows you what the phase-in would be over the next 4 years. The also included in this chart is the upfront tax rate increase of 0.0502. I am not recommending that because I feel that there's more flexibility with the phase-in. If the board was to choose the 0.0502 as an option, I would recommend that a debt management reserve fund be established so that the extra money that we collect on an annual basis is put into this. The tax rate increase will cover capital expenses. None of this money will seep into the operating budget and does not seep into the recommended budget at this time. So this tax rate increase is purely for the capital debt service expenditures going forward. Any questions about that? One thing I would also add as well is the 0.0795 and the 0.0502 equal the same amount at the end. It's just phasing it in. One of the reasons I'm recommending the phase-in also is because there's flexibility as we go forward in changing those numbers going forward depending on the environment that we go into on an annual basis.
Question?
1 cent on the county tax. Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, did
Go
you want
ahead.
to finish that?
No, go ahead.
So the phase-in is, tax increase is to cover the bond that folks voted for the schools and for affordable housing,
The
correct?
majority of the phase-in does cover that, but it also does cover some of the other significant capital items that are there. So it is, the majority of it is for the GO bonds, but then there's also some other over the years that will be covering some of the other capital debt.
Thank you.
And we'll have more information on that in the work sessions, more detailed of what percentage that is. Also, I'd add this year, a penny on the county tax rate is 1.8 million, and the 1.42 on county tax rate equals 2.6 million. And just for your information, the tax rate increase impact, this chart shows property value from 100,000 to 500,000 and what that increase would be for a property owner in 2017-18 on their tax bill. This is the compilation report, and every year we put this together. This shows what the requested increase was from county departments, education, including the public schools and Durham Technical College, Community Technical College, and outside agencies. The requested increase was $10 million. And then we show in the lighter boxes what was recommended and funded, and then the unfunded. And just for informational purposes, we've always shown what the tax rate would be if we wanted to fully fund those unfunded requests. Employee compensation for county employees, I'm recommending a wage adjustment of 2%. Which amounts to $980,000. Also, health and dental, this you have already approved in a previous abstract prior to the April open enrollment, but that is part of the compensation package because you as a board approved the employer to pay for that part of the increase. And then living wage, the $27,190 is the amount needed to increase the living wage for temporary employees in Orange County. And then also in the recommended budget is increased living wage for non-competitive contracts, and that amounts to $37,150. And I didn't put that in the chart because it wasn't part of the employee compensation, but we do have in the recommended budget that is recommended for the increase.
Commissioner Jacobs?
For the living wage for the temporary employees, are we phasing that in to be the full living wage over a number of years? Or is that just where we're, because this is the living wage now, we're going to stick with it as it goes up?
So this living wage goes into effect January 1st, 2019. We will start, we're always 6 months ahead because we do it within the fiscal year. So for temporary employees, we're currently staying at what the living wage is, but they're getting that 6 months before it actually goes into effect. Did that answer your question?
And it'll parallel the rise that takes place within county government?
Yes, yes. Yes.
I wasn't quite sure when to ask it, so I'll just ask it now. So someone came up to me actually today who does substitute teaching in the schools, and they're still getting $10 an hour. Is there anything that we can do on our side to increase that? I mean, in our domain, I shouldn't say our side.
We can, it's a challenge for us we give money to the schools in current expenses, and how they use that money is at their discretion. So we don't have the authority to tell them how to spend that money.
That's what I thought. Thought maybe there was a loophole.
We can encourage them
Maybe
Yes, we
encourage
can.
using our bully pulpit. Other questions right now?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Moving on. Just quickly, the county departments, I want to give the county department directors a lot of credit for the work that they did this year. They came in with very few requests. I had guidelines that were pretty strict and rigid regarding what I would fund, knowing that we're a team and that if things come up in the year, we'll work on those. So the functional leadership teams had very little to rate or rank this year. However, community services, there is a recommendation to increase the solid waste program $4 to $132 per year. If you recall, we hired a consultant who came in with a 4-year phase-in plan to get to fully funded. Right now, we're at $132 per year. And as we go forward, just like with the tax rate, we will look at that and evaluate whether we need to go up on an annual basis. This does mirror, the first 2 years has mirrored what the consultant has requested, but we're going to look at that real closely over the next 2 years. General government, there has been a request for a food council coordinator. This was an outside agency. There's now a request to make it a county employee, similar to the partnership model. However, this is contingent on a cost share amongst all jurisdictions, and we'll talk more about that as we get into the budget work sessions. But right now, I'm not aware that we have everyone on board. So the recommendation is in, but it's contingent on cost share. EMS billing collections position, this position is fully covered with additional revenue. And the revenue significantly exceeds the cost of this position. Racial equity training, this will be the first year of a 3-year plan to provide racial equity training for all county employees. I have funds in the county manager appropriation that I am allocating for that, so it's not new money, it's reallocating existing funds, and we will begin that in fiscal year 18-19. Human services, there's a dental hygienist that's being funded with new revenue and fund reallocation. And then also under the human services is the implement of a pilot for a local housing voucher program. And this is the only expansion on the county side of the budget. And this is using $100,000 to start a program and to monitor the effects and the benefits of this program. And we will bring to you if approved, we will bring to you the procedures and process and procedures that we will follow for this. And there's $100,000 in the budget, in this recommended budget for that local housing voucher. And although it's not a lot of money, it could take a few people off of the waiting list that we currently have. And then public safety, criminal justice resources position, Kate Fenhagen and Travis Mirren went to the ABC board and requested funds to fund this halftime position. And we have not heard back at this time, but this is contingent on that revenue. And if the revenue doesn't appear, then the position won't happen.
Mark?
Quick question. What's the deadline for Chapel Hill to decide on the Food Council participation?
I think that we would like to know by the time this budget is adopted.
So early
we've got
June?
about 7 weeks.
And what is the amount that they would be, generally, what's the amount they would
I
be
think they're
expected to
in
pay?
the $40,000 range for funding for this. They're a little more than we are. I think we're in 40, I think they're 43,000, something like that. And we'll bring all that information to you.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Next, we'll talk about education, and we'll start with Chapel Hill, Carborough City Schools, and Orange County Schools. The average daily membership, Chapel Hill, Carborough City Schools, they increased their average daily membership this year, and their out-of-district went up by 1, and their charter students went down by 7, and so their total is 12,387. Orange County Schools, they reduced their numbers this year, and we'll see this on a later slide, but it was 199 students down. Their out-of-district went up by 14, and their charter students went up by 152. And their total is 811. So what we see with that is the allocation changed 0.63%. So last year, Chapel Hill, Carborough City Schools was 60.1%. This year, they're 60.63%. And Orange County Schools was 39.9%, and they've gone down to 39.27%. And
So,
that's the ADM.
I want
Yes.
to just ask a question. I think I asked this last year, because the way this is presented is always confusing. So for Chapel Hill, you start with the 12,474. Then you subtract 242,
Yes.
which is students that are attending but are out of the district.
Right.
So they're attending school in Chapel Hill, but they're out of the district.
Yeah.
So are they included in that 12,474?
No.
No, they are not.
And then, because I see Todd LaFreeze nodding that they are. I'm just trying to figure out actually how many students there are. It's not 12,387, right? Because there's 155 charter school students that aren't there. Not talking about how many we pay for, because we pay for those even though they're not there. But actually, how many students are in the seats? Is it 12,387 minus 155?
That would be my understanding, yes, because the 155 are charter students that they're having to pay for that are not in the seats in the district.
And so, and then in Orange County, it's the 8,011 minus 769?
That would be in the district, right, in the seat, basically.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. But we're giving money for these total numbers. That's what we're
Correct,
funding.
we are. We are. It's based on the 12,387 Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools and the 8,011 for Orange County Schools.
Okay.
The next chart is rather busy and large, but I'll walk you through it. The one on the top is Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools operations. As you see, 2017-18, and I kind of went over that, 60.1%, and they're going up to 60.73%, an increase of 6.63%. Their current expense approved budget 17-18 was $47.8 million. They requested 51.9. And the recommendation is 50.9%. And charter students, they went down in charter students, and the recommended amount is $645,575. Also, with the health and safety contracts, the approved budget in 17-18 was 1,945. There was no request for an increase. However, I recommend an increase for COLA for the nurses and the SROs because, for example, Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools, they will have to pay the Chapel Hill Police Department. I anticipate there will be an increase for their wages, and so the cost would go up for that, and that's a $118,000 increase. The total recommended budget is $53,655,743, an increase of about $3.2 million, and that fully covers Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools continuation budget. The per pupil cost goes up $174 to $4,165. Same for Orange County School Operations. The allocation was 39.9 in 17-18. It goes down to 39.27, decrease of 0.63%. Their current expense was 29.7 million. Requested was 32. Recommended is 30 million for an increase of 410,000 in increase for current expense. Charter students, as you can see, last year was 2.4 million. They requested 3.3 million, and the recommended is 3.2 million for an increase of 740,000. The reason there's a difference between requested and recommended, the request was a projected number, and the number that was recommended is the DPI March report that certifies the number of students in the school. So we used apples to apples for both school districts. Health and safety contracts, again, they didn't request an increase. I'm recommending an increase, and that's $85,860. And then the total amount is $34.8 million, and that's an increase of 1.2. That does not fully fund their continuation budget. And their per pupil is same as Orange, or as Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools, $4,165 of an increase of $174.
I want to go back to. I want to go back to the slide before just to clarify that when we look at, I think the question was, Because the out-of-districts should be counted, they are in the seats. So it's not this 8,011 or 11 minus the 769. There is 103 also in Orange County schools that are in the seats. Basically, they're out-of-district. Chapel Hill Carborough of 242, those are tuition-paying students, so they are in the seats, basically, in the school system. So I did want to just clarify that.
But they're shown in parentheses because they don't count to the
They
ADM?
take out of the ADM because they are basically tuition paying, yeah. Now, I know Orange County Schools has, of their 103, I believe 20 are tuition paying, and I believe 83 are incentives that they give to employees that their children can attend, and they don't pay tuition. So, but I did want to clarify that numbers.
So if, again, looking at this chart, and maybe with the school folks who are here can just provide this information, I mean, how many actual students are in the seats? How many people are there? Is it the top number minus the charter students? So the second number is not counted in the top number?
May I?
Well, if someone could just clarify that.
We
and, you
will, and
know,
we'll have that information.
I think I could clarify. The point, the reason they're in parentheses is we don't pay for them. So that's why that's what the
Yeah, I
parentheses
get that.
is,
I
right.
just want to know if they're counted in the top number and then subtracted out because we don't pay for them, or if they are not counted in the top number, in which case then you would add them. Well, I just want to know how many people are sitting in the seats,
All
because
right.
we're paying for people who aren't there.
So I will put out a number here in the district.
Well,
might-
let's just, I mean, I don't want to belabor the point. Let's just ask the experts to figure it out, and they could
And we will.
come
We'll-
back either
yeah.
later during the meeting, or they could send us an email or something. But, you know, this is a confusing table, and if there's a way to present this information in the future in a more straightforward way, you know, where you could say, top line, plus the next line, minus the next line, equals. And,
Well, that's actually what that is.
well, I don't think that is. I don't think that's
Well,
clear.
what we'll look into this further, and we will come back.
Different answers about that.
Yeah, we will come back and we will have a chart that's easier to read for the public hearing, which is on May 10th, the first public hearing. So we'll have a new slide that explains it better.
Yeah, and I just want to be clear.
I
We're paying
understand.
for one number.
Right.
That's not the same number as the actual number of students who are in the schools, because we hold the school districts harmless for the
Right.
charter students. So what I want to know is, what's that difference? What are we paying for, and how many people are actually there? Because if you factor that in, we're actually paying more per pupil than what's listed than the $4,165. And I just want that to be acknowledged.
We will.
Yes.
I just want to add to that. I'm catching on to what Commissioner Dorsey is saying. But does that change the percentages as well?
No.
So the percentages stay the same whether we're adding or subtracting those lines?
The ADM determines the percentages, and those percentages are determined by what we receive from DPI.
Yeah,
Correct,
I'm not
Paul?
challenging the formula.
Yeah,
or
I know,
how we
I know.
decide, you know, how much money to give. I
Right,
just want to
right.
have a little more
You just want to
information.
understand how many kids are in the school,
Earl?
and we're going to figure that out.
I'm open to being corrected by the staff or any commissioners, but I believe, I'll use Orange County because the number of charter students are higher. I believe that there are 103 out-of-district students in the seats that we're not paying for, but there are 769 charter school students that are not there that we are paying for. So in essence, on those 769 students in Orange County and the 155 students in Chapel Hill, we're paying a shade over $8,000 per student for those students, because we're paying for them to be we're paying, that is 4,000 and something per student that's forwarded to the charter schools, and we're holding the schools harmless. So So technically, those students are costing us about $8,000.
Right, but that money is distributed among all the other students, so it actually.
Which makes a higher than.
That's right.
Higher than a $4,000 rate.
That's right.
I don't know exactly what the figure is.
That's what I'd like to know.
Okay, we'll get that information for you, Commissioners.
Just want to have as much information as possible.
Okay, the next slide shows the capital. For the first graph on top is the table on top is Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools capital. Reoccurring capital, an increase of 18.9. That is due, as you'll see down in the Orange County schools, that's really due for the reallocation that happened because of the percentage changes. So they increased 18.9, Orange County schools decreased 18.9. Long-range capital, there was an increase for Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools, and then for Orange County schools, 5,993. The third line on the table is a new program that I am recommending, and that is a deferred maintenance plan. Of the 8.8 million fund balance that was put into the budget, I'm recommending that 3 million of that go to deferred maintenance plan for both Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools and Orange County schools by ADM, by the reallocation that we've established for this recommended budget. That would be for some of those deferred maintenance items that the schools have not been able to proceed with because of the lack of resources. And we will set up a program with the schools. Once the board adopts this, we will set up a program where the schools will give us a list of the items that they will use this money for, and then we will reimburse them as they do the projects that they've set before. That gives an total increase of capital for Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools of 1.9 million, and an increase for Orange County Schools of approximately 1.2 million. And then the next slide just shows over the last 5 years the increase in per pupil that the board here has adopted and supported the public schools in Orange County. And it also shows the percent of general fund revenue, how that has played out over the years. And one thing I want to say clearly, as staff, we do not focus on the 48.1% target. The target, when we determine what that is after I've completed the recommended budget. And so it's not something that we're going in and trying to figure, but half of our budget is for the schools, and so we're always in that ballpark, as you can see. Durham Technical Community College, continuation, consistent with all the others. The current expense is, I think, around a $14,000 increase of what they received last year. Orange Connect, that is the funded by Article 46 sales tax, maintaining the current amount. And when we talk about this in the budget work session, we'll give a status report on how well that's done over the past year. And then capital outlay of $75,000, which is a consistent number across the years that we've given Durham Technical Community College. Outside agencies, I'm recommending the same process.
Bryce has a question.
Yes.
So what will the 75,000 be used for?
Paul, do you know directly what that was? Is that planning?
I can't recall exactly. It's consistent with what they've had for the last several years. They have not asked for an increase in that, but I can get the specifics to you.
Because I know they're planning on expansion and.
That is in the capital budget, and is that this year, the planning money for the expanded?
No, it's not.
Yeah, I think that's next year for
Okay.
this might be for contracted services, or they
Well, yeah,
consistently
I didn't think
ask
they
for
were ready
it.
for construction, but
Yeah.
the planning.
Yeah. The next slide is for the outside agencies. I'm recommending the same kind of format that we followed last year. The numbers are a little lower because being consistent with continuation budget, we took we honored the advisory board's scoring, and we looked at that, and then the percentage is on top of the requested. So outside agencies, unless there's a change, and we'll go over all of them on May 24th, unless there's a change in what they're doing for us, they would receive their base of what they received last year, and then the percentage would just be on what they're requesting for an increase. So everybody will get the same as what they got last year with somewhat of an increase based on their scoring by the advisory boards. The next shows the outside agencies. There were the existing agencies. The agency request was 1.7. 1.4 is recommended. 35,000 was a recommended increase. There are some that are not on here that were here that was on the list last year, and so the increase is somewhat more than 35,000, but compared to what we gave last year, that's the increase. New agencies, I did not recommend funding for new agencies because I did not I did minimal expansion in this budget. However, as we go through these, in almost all of the new agencies, I connected them with department directors, and in some way or another, they're doing work for the county, but in another way than just through the outside agency process, and we'll talk more about that. And so the total recommended appropriation is 1.4 million, which is consistent with the target that's been established of 1.2% of the general fund expenses on the county side.
Question, Earl?
Yes, going back to the previous slide on the scoring,
Yes.
I would be curious to know how many these outside agencies are scoring below 60, below 70.
We'll have that information
At
for
some
you.
point, it may be advisable if they are scoring at that level that we defund.
There are a couple that we'll be talking about during the outside agency presentation that may apply to that.
Okay, thank you.
And then finally, fire districts. And we had 2 fire districts come forward this year and request an increase, and most of those increases are for equipment. I think all of them were for equipment and capital going forward and debt service.
Land acquisition.
Right.
Yeah.
And then budget timeline, today is May 1st. You all will adopt a budget on June 19th. We have 7 weeks to work together on this and to make this your budget and what you want to do for the Orange County residents. The public hearings will be May 10th and 17th. And then we have the budget work session, and at your request, last year you requested that the resolution to intent to adopt would be a week before the adoption. Last year, if you recall, it was on a Thursday, and then the following Tuesday was the adoption date. We've put that on June 12th, and so a week later, we would you all would adopt the budget. So that gives us more time to look at that.
That's for Lady Bird's pills.
That was a very welcoming, calming sound.
Are there?
And then also budget document availability. Of course, it is on the Orange County website, but if you want hard copy or want to read a hard copy, any of the listed places have that available for all of you and the residents to read. And of course, we've given the Board of Orange County Commissioners their own private copy. And finally, the mission statement, which reminds us all of why we do what we do, and that is to make sure that our residents always come first. And that concludes my report, and I look forward to working with all of you on this budget. I would like to thank, as I said, I'd like to thank the department directors for their work on this budget. We were a team. We came forward. We worked together. I'm very proud of the team that we had. I'd also like to thank the superintendents, Dr. Baldwin and Dr. Wirt, for their willingness to meet with me, to talk with me, for us to work together on the best approach to making our resources go as far as they can, and also to Paul and Gary and Travis and Alan and Crystal and Chaz for all their work on helping this budget come together. So we will work with you and help you create a budget that you are all comfortable with. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. It's actually, it's really quite impressive, given the constraints that we have. It's exciting. I think that new deferred maintenance thing for the schools is a really creative and interesting and much-needed innovation, and I think I'm excited about this local housing voucher pilot, which we've talked about for a long time. Barry?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a few quick observations, not any arguments. And I'd like to make one request is, can we have a chart of the increase over the last 5 years in the county per pupil and what percent increase it is over the 5 years, and then what the state legislature has done for per pupil increase over those 5 years, so we can just track how we're doing compared to the need. I just wanted to point out a few things, and I also appreciate as Mark said, that we're trying this voucher program. You did this last year too. You may have done it all 4 years, but I just remember last year. But adding positions that can pay for themselves is much appreciated, I think, by everyone. It's a good way to, if we're going to grow as a government and add people, the fact that their positions pay for themselves makes it much more palatable and much more understandable to everyone, including the school systems, when they wonder why we're expanding when they're not getting all that they need, just like our staff isn't. An interesting set of numbers is that the report we have on the consolidated housing plan has a number for people 62 and older. It's almost identical to the number of students combined in the two school systems, which gives you an idea, especially when we come to budget time, about who is being represented and how we should represent the people who don't really ask for much. We had a SWOT analysis, and even though I thought it was very tendentious, they recommended that we should aim for a 70% property tax dependence, and this budget is there. So it was, to that extent, it was much ado about nothing.
Mia?
A couple of things. First of all, as always, I appreciate the work and the presentation, Madam Manager, in terms of how you do that. I particularly appreciate that you've added in the concept of the deferred maintenance for the schools this year. I think there's only one way to eventually get at that problem of the maintenance issues for the schools, and it's to start funding it. And so to do it over time, I think in that annual kind of way, I think is a great idea. Just briefly on the charter schools, I think I get some of what you're getting at, Commissioner Dorson. It's at some juncture, too many charter students will have left. I don't necessarily, I think we're there yet, because kids don't leave in packs of, in perfect sets of, 24 kids, and in groups like that, so they're scattered. But I think it would be very wise of the school districts, particularly Orange, I think in this case, to show us that. Where are the kids are you losing kids all in one place? Are you losing them from particular grades that would make a difference? If they're all scattered, you still have your fixed costs. You have to turn the lights on every day. You have to heat the buildings and those kinds of things. So I think that this plan of what we do right now still is valid. Someday it won't be if this trend continues. Let's hope it doesn't. But if it does, but I don't think we're there but I do encourage folks from Orange County in particular to show one way or another where the kids are coming from and whether or not this money is needed to turn the lights on, the proverbial lights on.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not advocating changing the policy right now. What I'm advocating for is having more information.
Right.
And being able to tell the story to our residents as we've tried to do consistently, in the full picture of the range of support that we provide to the school districts.
Yep.
I mean, we're the only county that does that, as far as I know. And I respectfully would disagree. I think when you're at 10% of the students, which is what the numbers are about at in Orange County, that's critical. And I just think so. I think it would be good to have that information.
Yep.
But I think that's part of the reason why this is an important discussion.
And just to say that it's not a disagreement, you're not disagreeing with me because I don't know. We need to see the
Right.
data. And I think there's a decent chance that they will show us that it's not critical yet, but I have no idea for sure.
Yeah, I'm just, my own opinion is when
Sure.
it gets to 10%, it doesn't matter where they're coming from. That's enough students that clearly would have if we didn't have this hold harmless policy, would have a significant adverse impact on the public school's ability to fulfill its mission. And we
Oh,
see
totally.
that happen
Oh, in that
districts
respect,
all
yes.
across the state. So that again, I just want us to have as much information. I just wanted to follow on one thing that Barry said about the property tax. On that slide, it's like the second or third slide where it's the budget revenues. I think it would be useful if you took that 70% of property tax and gave us a subdivision of how much is residential and how much is commercial, because that's another thing we've always been struggling with, and it's something we could look at over time as well. I mean,
can do
the
that.
net 70 is, as you pointed out, right in line with what had been recommended, but it's been a priority to try to improve the balance between residential and commercial, and so having it all lumped together like that
Great. We can do that.
obscures that question, so. Other comments, or obviously, we're going to have 7 weeks to wade into this, so are there any other comments or questions or additional information requests at this time, Barry?
On this conversation about charters, which we raised a few months ago, I think, they have their own growth plans. There's one of the charter schools is adding a whole section, and I think we could maybe be more proactive in projecting where this is going. We don't necessarily have, again, any control over what's happening, but where we do have control is whether we keep fully funding to hold harmless every single charter school position, because it's going to get to a point where it's a huge number for Orange County taxpayers. I won't say residents, I won't say citizens, people who pay taxes. And it's being forced on us, and we need to be clear about that. But in fact, I sent a story, an op-ed column to the board last week about how this is a national strategy, as we all know. And but we need to be talking more about that, I think, as opposed to just kind of taking the blow and trying to ameliorate it. We need to point out what's going on.
Yeah, they changed the state law last year. It used to be a charter, in order to grow, they had to go back to the state board and get approval. Now they can grow by up to 20% without any oversight, even if they're doing a terrible job and students are failing. They have an automatic 20% growth built in without any additional oversight. Mark?
So what Commissioner Jacobs you're talking about is one of the reasons why the request from Commissioner Burrows to get more detailed information is important. So where do we reach that point where you don't have to turn on as many lights?
Right.
Is what you're,
Exactly.
is part of what you're asking, to understand that you don't have to keep the lights on if 30% of the kids have left the school system, not all the lights.
Right.
And it may work in tandem with the reduced class sizes, because if you have fewer students, then the classrooms can accommodate without adding new classrooms. So it's a backward way of addressing a different issue.
Might have to be some redistricting, though.
All right, any other questions or comments about the budget? Renee?
So on the point of property taxes, when, for example, okay, I'll just put it this way, when, for example, the incentives, for example, Morinaga, after 5 years, we start to get that money, that tax money back. When will we see that? And when will that show up in your, or will it show in your, like, for example, your 5-year projection?
It will show in the 5-year projection, and I think this is the last year of the incentive. This is the last year of the incentive, FY 18-19. So, one, there'll be a little more money in Article 46 because we're using that to pay the incentive. And then also, Moranag will be paying the full tax bill with, well, they're paying the full tax bill now, we're just reimbursing them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that shown now, or it'll show later?
It does show in there
There's now in
because
the
it's-
Article 46 sales tax, which is a separate fund, so that annual incentive payment,
And we'll leave it there then, so it's not going to affect the operating budget at this time?
No.
right, it stays, it's been in the Article 46 sales tax fund. That's where it's been paid from.
And I'd just like to make one comment about the schools. I mean, it's obvious that there is a trend with people leaving, but I think rather than think about how many lights we can turn off, I would hope that we would work with the schools to see why children are leaving, why parents are taking their children out, to improve the schools, because otherwise we wind up having two school systems where one is well-funded and the other isn't, and a lot of children are going to be, they're going to have to sacrifice their own education. And I would just hope that we, think of it more of a positive way and see what we can do to help the school system to get back up to where parents will bring their kids back into the regular school system, because obviously there's something that's amiss. And that's why some charter schools are started. For example, I know one that had to get started because, basically because they were black children that were kicked out of the school, and the only way they were going to get an education was if they came to a charter school. So, it's situations like that. So I would just caution us about, so readily trying to figure out how we're going to, turn off the lights and redistrict.
Okay, other comments? All right. Next up, item 5 is a public hearing on the financing of various capital investment plan projects. The board will conduct a public hearing on the issuance of approximately $8.1 million to finance capital investment projects and equipment for the fiscal year and improve a related resolution supporting the county's application to the Local Government Commission for its approval of the financing arrangements. Gary Donaldson will make the presentation.
Good evening, board members. As you indicated, the purpose of this public hearing is to obtain approval for the issuance of approximately $8.1 million to finance CIP projects, which are part of the current fiscal year. The other component is to approve a resolution of the application to the Local Government Commission. In your abstract, you see what we normally include is we tell you the preliminary estimate of the maximum debt service for this financing, and that maximum debt service occurs in fiscal year 2019-20. It is $1.2 million, and the tax rate equivalent is 0.67 cents. The principal amortization schedule matches the useful life of the asset, so that's over increments of 5-year maturities, 8 years, and 20 years. And we're estimating the interest rates to be between 3.5% to 3.9%. There was one point I was told to make with respect to the published notice. In the published notice, it indicated $7.9 million, and in the financing to date, it's $8 million because we've included $60,000 for communication project, 911 project. So we expect to have this closed by the end of June, and with that said, open the public hearing.
All right, are there any questions for Mr. Donaldson before we open the floor? Earl?
On the Agriculture Center building, is that the current Agriculture Center building, 394,000? Or
Yes, sir, that was another change, the northern, we're now, the project description name is now the Northern Campus, and in the advertised,
That would not be the existing building now?
no, sir.
Okay.
Other questions? All right. Take a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. I don't think there's anyone here signed up to speak to this item. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to this item?
It's an exciting topic.
What?
It's an exciting topic.
It's all exciting. I mean, it's the breakneck pace of local government. Okay, then there's no one here to speak to this item. Motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Moved. Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 7-0. Now we have a resolution before us for discussion in attachment 2. I have one question for John Roberts about, does it matter that the public hearing notice listed one amount and now we're considering a different amount?
I'm going to defer that to the bond counsel. Mr. Jessup, who's here.
We got to make you work for it, Bob. You can't just come and sit in the audience.
I'm always up for, I'm glad when I get the easy questions. It doesn't matter. The public, it needs to be roughly the same amount. It still serves the notice for the public of the types and the scope of the projects. If we were going from 7.9 advertised to 79 million, I have a different answer. And we know that the final amount, whatever it is, will not be exactly 8.1 or 7.9. I think we're fine.
Okay, just wanted to check that. I knew if you go down, it's not a problem, but going up can sometimes be problematic. Okay, thank you for that. Any other discussion or questions about this? All right, then, how about a motion?
Motion to approve?
Sounds good.
Move the resolution? Would that do it?
Yes, I think that would do it.
Second.
All right, motion has been made to approve the resolution at attachment 2. Been seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Next up is, now we're moving on to the regular agenda, which is item 6. And first on the regular agenda is the Orange County Consolidated Plan Fiscal Year 2018-2019 Annual Action Plan and proposed fiscal year 2018-2019 home activities. Here to make the presentation is our friend Cheryl Hampton.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Thank you, and commission members. We're back again. We've had the process of 2 public hearings. We've done public notices. We've gotten some comments, both public hearings. One was in December, one was recently in April, and the annual update goes every year to update the 5-year plan. You all received a draft. We're here for 3 action items. One is to adopt a resolution approving the plan. 2 is to authorize the chair to sign a resolution approving the proposed home activities, which came before you and again are listed in attachment C3. And you will see the geographic disbursement around the county. And the 3rd is to authorize the county manager to implement the home program as approve and execute agreements based on the nonprofit entities that will be funded here. The draft plan meets the priorities that were laid out in the 5-year plan. We're looking at preserving and creating, so you will see activities for housing rehabilitation. It also seeks to help the very low and low income with some tenant-based rental assistance, some home buyer activity that will increase home ownership opportunities, and the acquisition of properties for home ownership as well as rental. So it is in compliance and congruent with the 5-year plan that was adopted before my tenure began. We are looking at several innovative things. The new Orange County Local Government Affordable Housing Collaborative approved the activities that were brought before you that we talked about in the public hearing on April 3rd. And so I would respectfully ask your consideration and approval of the 3 action items. And I'll stop now. I recognize our staff who works with the program, Ms. Renee Holmes, who's here, and we will stop now and see if you have any questions.
Questions? Barry?
Was there any discussion in this group, or are you foreseeing that there will be discussion in the future about relocation funds for people moving out of manufactured housing communities?
That was covered under part of the displacement mitigation assistance program that you all approved in March. We also have the risk mitigation and housing displacement fund that you all approved the last budget cycle, and working with the manager under her direction, we've created guidelines that went out, and we presented that to several of our nonprofit groups to get their input. They are eagerly anticipating that, so we have some funds in other areas, but under the home program, since it is a federal program, we are very cautious of compliance issues if we are trying to serve folks that may be undocumented. So that was brought to you on November 20th, that you all approved other means of us helping them from local funds only.
So thank you for that answer. So I was wondering if we could use some of the federal funds instead of only local funds to address the need, but if we're worried about people who are not documented, then it makes it more complicated.
Right. We can use local funds as needed for folks that meet the criteria under the federal regulations. If they do not, then we have to rely on our local funds, which you all graciously approved.
Got it. Thank you.
Other questions? I just had one brief one. So the line item that's administration, that comes back to the department, and that goes into your, to cover your staff salaries and things like that, or?
Very, very small part of that is salaries. It is to cover soft costs. We have soft costs that's there. And when I mean by soft costs, we have lead tests, we have a number of other tests like that that would have to come in. So it will do that wherever we can use it, but it will never cover the full amount because it's only 10%, only 28,000, a little over 29,000. So where we can, we will, but I'm very cautious with using small amounts of federal funds to defray personnel expenses, because as you know, the Congress has been trying to cut these 2 programs, home as well as CDBG, and so I wouldn't want to rely 100% or 50 or 70 or 60% on federal funds, but where we can, we use it to defray. And I work with the manager's office and finance around those issues.
Great. Other questions? Renee?
Yeah, I was surprised to see that, and we're still dealing with lead. Do you have an idea of how lead paint? Do you have an idea of how bad the situation is in Orange County?
Yes, it's prevalent because of the age of the older homes. And so we find that where we have to test for lead. In several of our rehabilitation projects that are open right now, we have done lead tests. Since I've been here, we've probably done 7 to 10 of them on the units that we've been doing. And it goes back to the age of the house, the materials that were initially used to construct it.
Right, I'm aware of that. I was just wondering if you had an idea of how many units are still, have lead, because the lead paint abatement program, was started decades ago. And
I don't have a specific
Okay.
number. I can find out of the applications as our inspectors go out. We look at the age. If it is older than 1976 or 1980, federal regulations and state regulations require that we do that lead tests to make sure.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, I
Yes.
know. I just didn't, like I said, I was surprised that it was still so prevalent, and I didn't know what the percentage of homes
Yeah.
that
Our,
still
our,
have it.
our preservation needs continue to grow, Madam Commissioner, as it relates to housing rehabilitation activities. So as that is the case, you will see this as an ongoing challenge.
And by the way, Congress is in favor of the programs. It's someone
Yes.
else that doesn't,
Well,
that was trying to cut the programs, but on both sides of the aisle, there was an increase in the home funds for this year, fiscal year.
Madam Manager, if I may, I'd like to share some good news that we received today. We received our allocation for 18-19, and so we will have some surplus. Instead of 289,000 or 290, we now have 401,340. So that was an increase. We will be meeting with the Orange County Local Government Affordable Housing Collaborative on May 22nd. Commissioner Markopoulos and the group will discuss that. On tomorrow, one of the items on the collaborative staff agenda is to discuss and bring back some recommendations in May for the use of this money, additional money that we can do a little bit more with.
Let's use it.
Fantastic. All right, any other questions or comments? All right, then, we are asked to consider a couple of resolutions. There's one at attachment 1, and I guess that's part of attachment 1, and then there's also one, and then we need to approve the activities at attachment 3.
And we need to do them separately?
Do we need to do them separately, counsel?
I think it's fine to adopt to it, make one motion to do, follow the manager's recommendation.
So moved.
All right, been moved and seconded to follow the manager's recommendation, which is to adopt the resolution approving the consolidated 2018-19 plan, authorize the chair to sign a resolution approving the home program design, and authorizing the manager to implement the 18-19 home program design. All right, that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0. Very good. Thank you. Next up, item 6B. Spot 5.0, update and recommendations on county transportation priorities in the TARPO. The board will receive an update on strategic prioritization, Office of Transportation, SPOT 5.0 activities from Orange County Transportation Planning staff, and consider the Orange Unified Transportation Board's recommendation for the Orange County's priorities within the Triangle Area Rural Planning Organization. Nishith Trivedi is here to make the presentation. Thank you.
Yes, I'm here to present, as Chair presented, the strategic prioritization of transportation 5.0, commonly referred to as SPOT, and seek your recommendations on county transportation projects in TARPO. First, I will show the process and the update of the SPOT process, and explain the statewide priorities and how they're drafted, and discuss with you the regional and division scores for Orange County projects. I'll also ask you for your recommendations in ranking the transportation projects in TARPO and include the outboard recommendations. Transportation projects in North Carolina are funded through the Strategic Transportation Investment Law, which was passed in 2013. This is a formula-based and procedure-based process for funding transportation projects. It is mostly data-driven with local input. The STI takes money from the NCDOT's capital projects and divides them into 3 buckets: statewide, regional impact, and divisional needs. At the end, it creates a 2-year statewide transportation improvement program, commonly referred to as a STIP, which is a 10-year program for transportation funding. The first 5 years are the committed projects, and the second 5 years are in developmental projects. The second 5-year projects are subject to reprioritization and rescoring. The 3 STI funding pots, as I mentioned earlier, is statewide, regional impact, and divisional needs. Statewide accounts for 40% of the budget, the regional impact counts for 30, and division needs count for the other remaining 30%. The statewide pot is 100% data-driven. It is all based on NCDOT scores, and there's no local input. They've recently released a draft decisions on what are the statewide funded projects. They're currently right now in the regional impact and divisional need assessment. The regional impact, the projects are based on 70% NCDOT data and their calculations, 15% local MPO and RPO local input, and 50% NCDOT division engineer input. Division projects are based on 50% data, 25% input from MPO and RPO, and 25% input from NCDOT. This is the roles and responsibilities. Since this is a state program, NCDOT determines the schedule and the process. They accepted the projects back in September of last year. They recently, from October to April, released the draft statewide results and the preliminary scores. They're currently looking for the local input from now to July, and division and region projects will be determined between August and December of this year before they release this draft STIP in next year. Local jurisdictions work with submit their projects to MPO and RPOs, who submit limited projects to NCDOT. NCDOT scores them and determines the results, and local jurisdictions go back to the MPO and RPOs and decide how the local input points will be allocated. NCDOT finalizes those results and drafts the STIP. As they're currently into the regional and the division category. As I mentioned earlier, the regional projects are based on 70% data. The max they could score in this data is 70 points. 50%, the remaining 30% is broken up into MP and RPO local input points. The division pod is 50% data and 50% input points. This is a schedule for the current Spot 5.0. Right now, NCDOT is accepting comments on the statewide category pot, and in the fall of in 2018, they'll be releasing for public comments the region pot. The STIP should be finalized by the end of this year and released for public comment in spring of next year, before it is approved in the summer of next year. Right now, there are 3 projects in Orange County that are funded through the statewide pot, and the first one is the I-85 NC-86 interchange. This was your #1 priority in DCAC MPO when projects were submitted. This is now a funded, committed project in the upcoming STIP. It will be a diamond interchange with widened bridge and turn lanes. This interchange is by Home Depot and Walmart. Another funded project is the I-40 widening. This is also part of your priorities when the project was submitted. It goes from I-85 all the way to 15505. It is in the development phase. It is funded as part of development. The right-of-way is subject to start in 2025. And I-85 is also a funded project widening from Orange Grove Road all the way to Durham County. It is also development and is scheduled for right-of-way beginning at the same time as the I-40 widening in 2025. Now for the region and division, these are the preliminary scores, and it's all data-driven. It's based on NCDOT data, and these are the projects that you submitted to the MPO for scoring. These are ones that have been given scores in the division and region category. I've also included those that are funded in the statewide. The top were the ones in Tarpo. It includes Old Greensboro Road, modernization, Eflin Cedar Grove modernization, OCPT, deviated fixed route in North Orange County, and the others are in DCAC MPO, which they follow a quantitative process. Right now, it's just in the local input point process. The TARPO process requires counties to rank their projects. DCAC MPO process is very quantitative based, and in June, they will be producing the results of this allocation of those points for public review. TARPO will conduct an in-house in each county, drop-in session in each county, while DCAC MPO will release a 21-day public review period. The results should be adopted by the MPO and RPO boards in June, July, and submitted to NCDOT. Now for the ask. This is where asking for your recommendations on the county projects in Tarpo. Tarpo's local input point process is 2 phases. It relies half on NCDOT scores and the other half on how county wants to rank the projects. The county level ranking are developed and adopted by local jurisdictions in each of the 4 counties. Our projects compete in Tarpo with Chatham County, Lee County, and Moore County, as well as the cities within them. In May 2nd of last year, you signed a resolution that prioritized some of the projects. These are the 3 ones that scored in Tarpo. Old Greensboro Road, which is on the south side of Orange County. Elfin Cedar Grove Road improvements, which is on the north side of Orange County. And the deviated fixed routes, which is for 2 transit buses on the northeast and northwest Orange County. April 18th, this was presented to the outboard, and they recommended that the deviated fixed route be ranked as number 1, while the others followed subsequently after. Again, I remind you, these are the scores. These are all division pot projects, so they are going to be from the division pot. In Tarpo process, the first 2 projects that you rank as number 1 and 2 will get the full 100 points. The third one, we do not know, because that third project will compete with all the other county projects in Tarpo. We do not know if the third ranked project will get any points or not. They'll be determined in June when the results are determined. The NC-54 widening was not a project staff, nor you, nor outboard submitted to Tarpo, nor did Tarpo submit it to for the process. It was submitted by BGMPO. But it is in Tarpo, so that's why it's on this list.
It was submitted by who?
Burlington Graham, MPO. So the manager's recommendation is for the board to consider the outboard recommendations for the county ranking for submittal to Tarpo. I take any questions and comments you may have.
Questions? Barry?
On Eflin Cedar Grove Road, my understanding is that when Hillsborough expands its reservoir, it's going to change some of the roads up there. Is that included in the thinking on how this is ranked?
No, this is ranked by NCDOT as a modernization project. It includes turn lanes, it includes widening the shoulder, bringing it to current standards.
Right, but what I'm asking is if Hillsborough is going to change the road, then it doesn't seem like it would make much sense to be making improvements until we know what they're doing.
Right. Right. It's the lowest scoring project. I'm not exactly sure what Hillsborough is going to be planned for that right now. I'll look into that for you.
That'd be good. I also had a question about the I-85, NC-86, and the I-85 widening in general. Do we interpret the fact that DOT around Hillsborough is totally eliminating all the trees that have been in the median as part of their moving ahead, or they've just decided to kill trees while they have a chance?
Right now, it's just a new project as part of a committed, funded project. There hasn't been any design or any engineering done on this project yet.
So can we find out why they did that?
I can look into it, yes, sir.
That'd be nice. And then, I don't think this is your wording, but on page 2, where it talks about the Burlington Graham MPO, and it says that they're asked to consider more than just pre-preliminary scores as prerequisite for formal scoring. Can we have an English translation for that if it ever comes back to us?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Penny?
So that was actually my question, too, on the Burlington Graham. I don't quite understand the pre-preliminary rankings, but it seems as though we lose out every time with the Burlington Graham MPO. We never get anything funded.
Right.
So it would, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know if it's kind of rigged that way, or it's just the way well, you're on the Burlington Graham still, MPO?
No, Earl is now.
Earl is now, but, so it's
Was
just.
for a few
You
years,
were,
yeah.
yeah, it's just a concern, because as long as I've been on this board, we've never gotten anything through on the Burlington Graham MPS. So I'd like to know,
We don't get much through the other MPO either.
well, but this is nothing. This is zero.
Yeah.
And you said you're trying to develop some sort of relationship and some sort of understanding of why that happened. So that would be good to follow through and.
I can give you a little update. Right now, Burlington Graham has they have a subcommittee meeting going over the SPOT 6.0 process and how that process is going to be done and how that's going to be, how projects are going to be selected for SPOT 6.0. Since it is too late to do anything about this 5.0 process, they're working on the next, how the projects are going to be selected, which ones are going to be submitted, how the input point process is going to be. They have a subcommittee and committee process going in and evaluating the next phase for the next SPOT process.
Okay.
I'll look more into that and get more information to you
Yeah.
for the new process as it develops.
Okay. But it'd be nice to be ahead of it instead of behind it, because it seems like that's what happens. We get behind it. And the second question is on the NC 54, it wasn't ranked, but it was put in. And the outboard didn't want to put it in because they didn't know the completion of that. Is there any update on that? When the completion
Staff
date?
is recommending not to put any points on NC 54 projects since we did not submit it. It was not part of your original resolution of submissions. It was not part of TARPO's. It was a surprise to everybody when that project showed up on the SPOT process. On the spot, since it was not part of any decision making, we didn't submit it. We don't recommend any points. We recommend it not be ranked at all. That way, no points are given to that project.
Okay.
Right now, in C54, they're doing a corridor study right now
Right.
for the whole process, and we recently came out of a public workshop for that. NCDOT is waiting for that study to be completed before doing anything with that.
And when is that? When is that completed? Do we know?
It'll be scheduled sometime in the fall, September of this year, for the MPO board to review it and adopt it.
So may I?
Yeah, of
So
course.
wouldn't this be, the study be done on time to get into the SPOT 6.0?
It is already in, it can be, we can review that and see if you want to submit it for 6.0. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mark?
So do these rankings speak for themselves, or are we being asked to testify on behalf of any of our favorite roads here?
It depends on these two rankings, what projects you want to rank. Well, I will go to this table. This is the table that you're asked to rank, which projects you want 1, 2, and 3, or 4 and 5 you want to rank the NC 54. But right now they're ranked based on the original May 2nd resolution that Old Greensboro Road is ranked number 1, Elfland Cedar Grove is ranked number 2, and OCPT is ranked number 3.
And you're suggesting moving the light transit buses to number 1?
Or outboard, that was their outboard's
Outboard.
recommendation. Staff recommendation was to keep the recommendations as you were originally prioritized in May.
I drive Old Greensboro Highway all the time and would really be great to see that improved. I actually almost hit John Edwards on Old Greensboro Highway one time.
Aw.
And if we'd had that 4-foot shoulder, it wouldn't have been so nerve-wracking. He had just moved into his new house, and I think he was out jogging in the country, enjoying his first day in the country, and he came over the hill with his iPod on, with his ears plugged, and I came upon him around a curve. It was scary. I didn't want to make headlines, and I narrowly averted that.
Can I ask you, this slide that we're looking at, it says max 50. That's the most number of points any project could have gotten?
Right now, based on the quantitative score, NCDOT's quantitative data, this is the max they can score right now is 50 based on that quantitative data portion.
Right, so the maximum they could have got is 50, and these projects, none of them got higher than 25?
Yes, sir. Now they're looking for local input points. Those local input points will raise that score.
Right. And that'll go in the second column on this chart, what we decide, where it says max 70? Or it's going to be added to that division
It'll be added
score?
to the division. It would just stay in division. The division score will go up if you decide which ones you want 1 and 2.
And it will go up to 100% or 100 points? Is that what you said earlier?
Division is, this, half of the scoring is 50% is data, so this is half the score. The other half is going to be the local input points. If our MPO assigns it 100 points, 25 would add 25 points to that score. And the division engineer will add the other 25%. So it may go up another 50 points.
So just to be clear, so if we pick the buses as number 1, how many points will it get altogether after that?
50 points.
So it'll have the maximum in
It'll
that
get
category.
74.81.
Okay.
And there is no guarantee that will actually get funded if
Right,
other county
right.
projects beat it.
You get 74.81 out of a possible 120?
Out of 100. The max a project, any project can score in the end, when the spot is completed, the max any project can score is 100 points total.
Fascinating. All right, any other questions or comments? Because you would think they could get 120 if there's a max 70 and a max 50, but ours is not to reason why. Any other comments? Earl?
I'll make a comment. Given that we don't know exactly what's going to happen with the Eflin Cedar Grove Road with the reservoir expansion, there's definitely going to be a reservoir expansion. It's probably going to require moving that road. And given the fact that although there's traffic on that road, I don't know that the traffic on that road would compete either with the old Greensboro or the transit buses. We need to be laser focused on getting transit service as much as we can. So I would essentially move Eflin Cedar Grove Road out of the contention.
All right, other thoughts, other comments? A motion of some kind?
Is to consider the outboard recommendation. How you want to rank these projects, I leave that to your discretion.
So we need to make a motion saying how we want to rank these projects.
Yes, sir.
And is there a copy of the outboard's recommendation in here? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's on the
Attachment 1.
first one, attachment 1.
Attachment 1. Oh, that's the recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay.
How they
It's just number
recommended.
one
Right.
there. Yeah.
All right, so what is the pleasure of the board? The outboard recommendation is the transit vehicles number 1, and Old Greensboro Road number 2, and Eflin Cedar Grove number 3.
I'll move the outboard recommendation.
Question.
Yes.
If we were to just choose one, does that add any more certainty at all?
Number 1 and 2 will get 100 points each.
Equal? Okay, right.
All right, Earl?
I'm not going to make an issue out of it, but these 4-foot paved shoulders on Old Greensboro, given the amount of bike traffic that we've got in that area, I honestly consider to be more critical than the transit buses if we're ranking number 1 and number 2. There's nothing I'd love any better than to see 4-foot shoulders on Old 86. I travel that road every day, and you better be watching out very carefully, or the scenario that Commissioner Markopoulos mentioned with a jogger will occur on Old 86 with a biker. So these 4-foot shoulders, I think, are critical. While I was serving on Tarpo, I managed to get points assigned by some of the other counties toward a couple of roads in the southern part of the county to go from 2-foot shoulders to 4-foot shoulders. That at least gives some degree of security so folks will actually move out of the travel lane over to a 4-foot shoulder. It seems like a 2-foot shoulder, the folks riding the bikes just don't wish to ride on a 2-foot path, but those 4-foot shoulders really seem to bring people out of that travel lane, and I think that's critical.
All right, well, yeah.
I'll just back you up on that. So many of the rural roads are dangerous on a daily basis, and that would make a huge difference. But I'm curious, what's the relative value of the transit buses from your point of view versus the road work? I mean, how do we?
I'm not able to speak on behalf of transit. Theo Letman, our OPT director, can speak more on that value.
So I really would like to support what Earl's talking about, but need to know we're not sacrificing too much.
Evening, Commissioners. The transit vehicles are necessary for the fixed deviate service that we've been planning to deployed. Plus, we need to have these vehicles for ADA service as well. So it's not just providing just the scheduled fixed deviated service, but it's also to provide disabled passengers the opportunity to ride as well.
How much do they cost?
It's $54,200 a piece, $108,000 total.
We just heard from 3 advisory boards at our last meeting about how we needed to improve our public transportation in the non-urban parts of Orange County. And we just had a discussion a few meetings before that about trying to acquire a public transportation vehicle. And we were talking about how we could possibly fund it because it wasn't going to get adequate funding through, I think it was the DCHC. So I respect the idea, but I think we should stick with having our highest priority, which is not bike lanes, it's public transportation, especially in light of what we've heard from our advisory boards.
All right, so Commissioner Rich made a motion. Oh, Commissioner Price, you want to speak before?
Yeah. I know that Tarpo has done this in the past, but could we just do 2?
I'm sorry?
Could we just have 2 projects? There doesn't seem to be, I wasn't hearing a huge support for Eflin Cedar Grove Road. Is it possible to put the weight of the points on just the top 2, the buses?
If that's what you would like to recommend, we could just recommend 1 and 2 is those projects. Number 3 would not be ranked, and therefore it would not get any points. I mean, right now, we will not know what number 3, how many points your third ranked project would be, because that third project competes with the other county projects.
But
It
it
may
doesn't-
not get any points, even if you do rank it as number 3. It may get some points, it may not get any. We won't know till the results are, till we know how they compare with other projects.
But it doesn't take any points away from 1 or 2.
No.
Right.
1 and 2 will get 100 points each, regardless.
Earl?
Yeah, I don't want to make it clear, I'm not trying to make a fight out of this or anything. It's, I think both of them are priorities. I don't oppose the motion by any means.
Okay, well, the motion's on the,
Second?
what?
Are you looking for a second? here?
Yes, I'm
'Cause
looking
Penny-
for, well, she's looking for a second. I'm just,
Penny, I would love to give you a second.
Thank you.
all right, so now the motion has been made and
Second
seconded
is up.
to do the outboard ranking, which is the buses as 1, Old Greensboro as 2, and Eflin Cedar Grove as 3. Any more discussion on that?
Wait, I thought we just dropped Eflin Cedar Grove.
Well, the motion was
Oh, okay.
to adopt the outboard
Outboard recommendations,
Yes.
sorry.
So that, if you want to discuss that, now's the time, but that was the motion. right?
Yeah, I'd like to offer either a substitute motion or ask if the motion maker and the seconder would consider just dropping Eflin Cedar Grove Road. And in fact, I would say that, not criticizing anybody, but knowing that Hillsborough is doing the reservoir, we should have gotten that information before it even went to the outboard, because it's going to be a totally different road, potentially, and probably not amenable to being improved until we find out where it's moved.
So do you,
And in
Renee?
addition to that, I know that some people are very leery about the widening, not knowing the full scope of what's happening. There is discussion on, why is it, turning into a boulevard of sorts? So I actually think it needs more study.
so there's a request to you as the motion maker, Penny.
Yeah, well, that's fine. I'm just curious, what do we know about the road that we should be knowing right now? I mean, is there no information about it? Why would this still continue? Why did it go to the outboard?
Some of these projects just stay in the list.
It was part of the
Until they
original May 2nd resolution of submitting projects to the RPO, and it scored according to NCDOT data.
I mean, one of the constant banes of our existence is sharing information with other governments and getting information back. So I suspect this is another example of,
Falling through the cracks?
Something falling through the cracks, yeah. Earl?
Yeah, again, being a resident of the area, the amount of traffic, and from what I'm from my perspective, the prioritization should not include that road right now. I mean, I wouldn't want 3 projects coming from Orange County to impinge on the viability of the 2 highest priorities.
Well, so Penny's accepted the friendly amendment. The seconder, do you accept that as well?
That's fine.
Okay, so now that we have the new motion, which is just the buses and Old Greensboro. Any more discussion about that? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next up, consent agenda. Anybody need to remove anything from the consent agenda?
I'd like to remove J, please.
Jay, anything else? All right, then can we get a motion on items A through I?
Wait,
Oh,
no.
you wanted to remove something else?
Well, I was wondering, should we remove the one for the proclamation on aging? Director Janice Tyler is here.
Well, what, do you want to remove it?
Well, I mean, I don't know, is she here for that, are you here for that proclamation? She's here for, yes, I will, because
All
she's
right.
here for the proclamation.
So we'll remove item D as well. Okay, a motion on the rest of the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that item passes. That's A, B, C, E, F, G, H, and I. We'll go to Commissioner Jacobs with item J, since you removed it first.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to point out that based on the information that we have, we're adding 79 more acres that are going to be protected in Orange County to 2,313 acres that have already been protected. It's just worth celebrating that we continue to do this. We continue to find partners, multiple partners in this case, because it's not only the Eno River Association, but the state Clearwater Management Trust Fund. And so it's an example of how successful the Lands Legacy Program is and how important it is. So with that, I'll move approval.
Second.
All right, thank you for that, and actually for pointing that out. That is worth celebrating. And we should highlight that in some public way on our website or some other means. All right, that item J has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0. Back up to item D, Older Americans Month Proclamation. Commissioner Price?
Well, I would just ask Janice Tyler to come forward.
Ms. Tyler, come forward. The board is considering voting to approve a proclamation joining federal and state governments dedicating the month of May as Older Americans Month and a time to honor older adults for their contributions to the community.
Good evening, County Commissioners. I'm Janice Tyler, Director of the Orange County Department on Aging. It is May 1st. Happy Older Americans Month. So I am here every year in May to say that to you guys. So thank you so much for joining us in this celebration. This year's theme is Engage at Every Age. So come engage with us at the Department on Aging. If you haven't been to one of the senior centers lately, we would love to see you there.
Do you want to read the proclamation?
Sure. Whereas Orange County includes over 26,000 persons age 60 and older who enrich and strengthen our community, and whereas Orange County is committed to engaging and supporting older adults, their families, and caregivers, and whereas we acknowledge the importance of taking part in activities that promote physical, mental, and emotional well-being, no matter your age, and whereas Orange County can enrich the lives of individuals of every age by promoting home and community-based services that support independent living, involving older adults in community planning, events, and other activities, and providing opportunities for older adults to work, volunteer, learn, lead, and mentor. Now, therefore, we, the Orange County Board of Commissioners, do hereby proclaim May 2018 to be Older Americans Month. We urge every resident to take time this month to recognize older adults and the people that serve them as vital parts of our community. This is the first day of May 2018.
Move the proclamation.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes 7-0.
Thank you very
Janice,
much.
if I'd have seen you back there, we would have moved this up the agenda and
That's
gotten
okay.
to it earlier in the evening.
Thank you.
And this
Thank
may
you.
be the most succinct resolution we have
Ever.
adopted
Yeah,
in
when
years.
we don't write them, they're very pithy. All right, next up is the county manager's report.
I have nothing to report this evening.
All right, then the county attorney's report.
Nothing tonight.
All right, then we move on to item 11, appointments. Item 11A is appointments to the Commission for the Environment. There are two names being brought forward, and also I'll just point out that there's an at-large land resource position that's been vacant since May of last year. And so we had, in our last time we talked about this, we had said we would go back to the CFE and tell them that if they didn't have somebody, there was a possibility that we would just fill the position pursuant to our policy. So there are two names, and then there is a third position for the board's consideration. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll nominate Carrie Fletcher for position 8 and James Eichel for position 12.
Second.
All right, that motion has been made and seconded for positions 8 and 12. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0.
And if I may, I will say, I looked at the at-large position and I looked at the applicants, and it didn't seem like any of them had any background that was even remotely related to land resources, except maybe they own property.
I appreciate that. I'll just note that under our policy, we can
I was
waive
ready.
that requirement.
Well, I
right?
was
So-
ready to do
yeah,
it. Oh,
okay.
you mean that,
We
that
could-
they not have a land resources
That's right.
person?
Part of the situation, what we anticipated was these positions are hard to fill potentially based on the classification. So we agreed if it got to the point where we were going to waive it, just like we could for a township requirement or something else, so.
And Dave Stansel is here, and I think they met last night.
Dave, why don't you come forward and give us a quick update? I appreciate that feedback, though, but just to be clear, that what the policy says is.
Got it.
Commissioner Jacobs is right. The commission has tried to find someone to fill that position unsuccessfully. They thought they had a candidate, but the person didn't apply. So I had notified Donna earlier today. The commission is aware of the situation, and they understand that you may just choose to pick someone from the pool. So that's expected, potentially.
I didn't see anyone special.
Or they can continue to try and recruit someone, but to date, it's been unsuccessful.
And I'm not going to say that publicly.
All right, so does anybody want to nominate anyone for that open position?
Lori Langham?
Are you making a
Yeah,
nomination?
I'll make a nomination.
I'm sorry, I did not hear that. What?
Lori Langham?
Okay, Commissioner Price is nominating Lori Langham for position 3. Is there a second? I'll second it. All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Can I see the notes?
Okay, let's see the hands on the nose. Okay, so that motion fails. Burrows, Jacobs, Rich, and McKee.
Couldn't help it.
Any other nominations?
With only one member missing on that board, I don't see how it's going to impinge on the activities of it. Possibly one more effort to appoint or to recruit.
May I make just a comment about something else? Without going into who, there's a member of the board that's serving his third-year term. Served 2 full terms, went off, and now he's back in his first term of the second set. And I think these biographies ought to indicate that somehow.
I can't hear you.
I think these ought to indicate that someone who's already served 2 full terms and now they've started a new cycle of 2 full terms.
Okay,
Yeah,
you would like-
because
okay,
some of the
okay.
board members have expressed concern that we're putting the same people on over and over again. This is a case where the person has a distinctive background that's important to the Commission for the Environment. So I'm not disputing whether he should be on there, but I just think it ought to be somehow indicated so that people are aware that that's the situation.
And I would just like to say that I was not moving to appoint this person because I think the board is understaffed. I think there's people who have volunteered to participate and ought to be recognized and given an opportunity, so.
I want to nominate Emily Mixon.
I'll second that. So Emily Mixon has been nominated and the nomination's been seconded. Any discussion? Give folks a minute to find her application.
See where she went to school.
All right, a motion has been made and seconded to appoint Emily Mixon to the vacant position number 3, I believe it is. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
No.
Let's see the no hands again.
So 3.
Okay, so it's 3. So that motion passes 4-3. That one, the noes were Price, McKee, and Jacobs. All right, item 11B is the Human Relations Commission.
I'll move number 1, Stephanie Sewell, and 12, I'm sorry, Stacy Sewell, 12 is Stephanie Harrell.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion's been made and seconded to appoint Stacy Sewell to position 1, Stephanie Harrell to position 12. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. All right, next up is the Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee.
And that one we need to do, right?
Again, this is a committee where the people have to do a year of training before they can serve on the board. So, and these folks who are being brought, these names that are being brought forward have completed their initial training as required by the state. Mia?
I move we approve Stephanie Miller for position number 3 and Karen Macklin for position number 6.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. Next up is the Orange County Board of Adjustments. And here we are,
You're moving some people around a little bit, and then one open appointment for the board to decide.
I'll start off with the motion to put Leon Myers in as the alternate
in the number 5 slot.
in the number 5 slot.
All right. That
Second.
motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, so that number 5 is filled. Now there are 3 other recommendations.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to nominate for the number 1 position Susan Halkiotis, number 6 position Randy Herman, number 7 position, Holly Safi.
Second.
All right, that motion has been made and seconded. The recommendation's on the agenda. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? That passes 7-0 as well. All right, there's some follow-up items, and now we're going to go into a closed session to discuss several matters. So we need a motion to go into closed session to consult with an attorney retained by the board to preserve attorney-client privilege, to discuss matters related to the location or expansion of industries or other businesses in the area served by the public body, including agreement on a tentative list of economic development incentives that may be offered by the public body in negotiations, to establish or to instruct public body staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken on behalf of the public body in negotiating the price and other material terms of a contract proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease. And, yeah, so we need a motion on those
So
counts.
moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, those opposed? That motion passes 7-0. We are going into closed.